Hello, it is May 31st, third days of demonstrations here in Dallas. But tonight's a little bit different. We actually no longer are, we have had the quarantine, not everything's opened up, but now we have curfew because of the protests getting out of hand due to bad actors that seem to add fuel to the fire, the police overreacting and taking action when no action is necessary, which then adds more fuel to the fire. It's just all being mishandled poorly. But as my mother, who's 90 years old, said, every now and then we need a really good riot in this country to make people wake up. We were discussing about how peaceful protests so frequently do not work, because people don't listen to what they're protesting or just ignore it. But when you have destruction of property on a mass scale, some people take notice a little bit more. And granted, not all of it is done by the protesters. There seems to be bad actors in it that are infiltrating these protests and escalating the situation. But then also the police. I've had friends that have attended the protests, and they were saying that we were doing fine until all of a sudden the police decided they fired tear gas on us when there was nothing that provoked it, except we were marching down the street. So, and then she did mention, one of my friends, she mentioned that out of the blue, once there were another section of downtown near Deep Ellum, all these people dressed all in black and with ski masks showed up and started smashing windows. Like, where did they come from? They weren't part of our group. So obviously they're being infiltrated, but just the whole thing's just not being handled properly. And the police look like they're scared, and they should be. They're getting a taste of the terror they've been inflicting on other people. So, I don't call these riots. This is a rebellion. A protest is, I don't like what's happening, and I'm telling you that. A rebellion is saying, we're not going to put up with this shit anymore. And this is what it has become. I mean, according to the news that I watched earlier, 73 cities in this country had protests or rebellions last night. 73 cities all over this country. This has gone beyond just George Floyd. He was the match that ignited this fire. And I hate to see all this violence and destruction. My neighborhood right now, most of the businesses put boards on their windows. I'm in an area where I'm under curfew. Interesting that they can impose a curfew, but they really never could quite impose the quarantine. So all those people that were screaming, "Oh, my civil liberties because they're forcing me to wear masks," or telling me I should wear masks, they weren't forcing us, but telling us we should wear masks against my civil liberties. Where are they now? The government just imposed a curfew. That is limiting your civil rights. But you know what? The hypocrisy of the protesters. They were protesting. They couldn't get a manicure, but they're not protesting a curfew, which is protecting white people, basically, because that's how it's seen. Also black people, but there's this duality that's just so evident, because these white people that were complaining about that, because it was mostly white people complaining, all of a sudden, we're scared and locked in our homes and we boarded up our windows. Shows the hypocrisy. But they're not out there protesting that I'm being forced to stay indoors because they're afraid of blacks. Or I'm sorry, the blacks, because that's how people, that term just, why you say the blacks? You never say the whites, the Asians. I'm sorry, usually it's said the Orientals, because that's the bad phrase. Anyway, I'm rambling a little bit there, but yeah, so this is, again, COVID-19 is kind of off the page. The concern is how much is the virus spreading in these crowds. Though from everything that I've been seeing from people that have been attending these protests, they've been informing me, people are wearing their masks, which in a weird way helps them with the tear gas, because they're not getting so suffocated by it. But from what I hear, people are trying to somewhat keep their distance, and they're wearing masks. But as someone commented, they were funneled at one point by the Dallas police barricades into a tight group, which they were trying to remain distant for social distancing, but the Dallas police put up the barricades in such a way that as the group was marching down the streets, they were funneled into a tight squeeze at one point. Regarding COVID-19 cases, second stage our numbers have dropped. and it looked like we were slightly on the decline, or plateaued on a decline. Well, now it's been about 2 weeks since the second phase opened up, and guess what? The numbers are back up again. So it's spreading again. But nobody's doing anything about it, so this country's really fucked. Bless my mother. She's 90 years old, and she was like, I was hoping here towards the end of my life, because I'm in my 90s, so this would be the end portion of my life. Not that she's going to die anytime soon, or she's terminally ill, but she was like, this is my years of being more relaxed and retired. She said, look all what is going on. Last year at October 20th, the tornado hit Dallas, and she was hit by the tornado where she lives. Her area was completely demolished and destroyed. By a weird miracle, the building she was in suffered minor damage. Though 10 yards across from her, in just about every direction, pretty much everything was demolished. It was just a fluke that she had one broken window. Considering the amount of, this is the most expensive tornado in the U.S. history that hit Dallas. It just went through a very populated area of the city, and she was in the section when it sped up to, there was a moment when it sped up to an F4 for just a brief few seconds, and she was in that part. I mean, we're talking vehicles were flown for not just yards, but we're talking like half a mile through the air. In fact, 2 landed in front of her unit on top of each other. It's like, who owns those cars? I don't know. They're not from this neighborhood. Anyway, but it's just the massive destruction. So she went through a tornado. Now she went through COVID-19. Now she's going through the rebellions that are happening in the United States. She's like, gee, I turned 90 and all this excitement happens, but I wasn't wanting all this excitement. But she gets the total issue of why this is happening, and she's like, the country doesn't listen. And it only listens when something major happens, and it had to go to this level. And she said, COVID-19 fueled it because people have been the Black community has been so impacted by COVID-19, as she was pointing out. And she said, the disease has affected more Blacks. The unemployment rate is higher for Blacks right now. I mean, it's through the roof, but it is higher for Blacks. They already were systematically oppressed economically. She said, what do you expect to happen? And then you have this killing on that the entire country saw on video. I mean, an obvious murder, and only one person was charged. The 3 other have not been charged, and she even agreed that murder 3 is not the right charge. She said, it's just, and we know, as she commented, we know most of the people that are charged get off. So the odds that this man will actually go to jail are slim, and we know this already. So she said, but that just was the match that lit this fire. And she said this fire needed to happen. It's unfortunate that our government and our leaders have ignored the needs of the population for so long that it had to get to this point. She said, but the peaceful protests, she was talking about Colin Kaepernick kneeling. She said, nobody paid attention to it. They spun it into something else, which they did. He was clearly protesting police brutality. And the image of the fact that he was kneeling and the death of this man was because somebody kneeled on his neck. Talk about foreshadowing. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Those are my mother's thoughts. So that's what's going on with COVID-19 as I'm locked in my home, not able to go out because it's past curfew. And I actually am supposed to do an assignment tomorrow night. The curfew is at 7. My assignment's supposed to start at 5, but I'm not sure I'm going to be done with that assignment before curfew. So I need to call my employer tomorrow, that I work contract from, and ask them, what do I do? How long is anticipated that meeting? Because I'm in the curfew zone. So, because they announced these curfews indefinitely. They didn't say for the next 2 days or anything. It's indefinite until we further notice. They said definitely tonight and tomorrow, and then it's indefinite. And she said they'll revisit it later on in the week. So, living in history. Yay. And by the way, if you're new to this, my name is Mark Brian Sona. I'm an actor, a writer, a theater producer. I have my own theater company, but I work also as an interpreter. And I've been vlogging about my experience of living with COVID-19 more. I started this originally as a way of, like a video diary for myself. But it, oddly enough, who knew, became a chronicle of this momentous event in history of the United States. So I'm going to keep this up because 10 years from now, I want to revisit this and see how I was feeling about it and all the events that happened. So if you'd like, watch the playlist There's all the videos. I started it like 2 weeks into the COVID-19 shutdown. And then the plus sign means how many days I've been doing this video and kind of keeping the chronicle of it. And I try to touch on different topics every day or new experiences every day. So please like, subscribe, ring the notification bell if you want to be notified every time I upload a video. But if you watch more than 2 of these videos, please go ahead and subscribe. It does help me out. So just do me the favor of just subscribing. I managed to hit the 50 mark. I'm at 51. I'd love it to go up. I'd love to get 100, but anyhow, just a few more subscriptions, please. I'll aim for 60 next. Have a good evening if you are watching this tonight. If you watch it during the day tomorrow, have a good morning or good afternoon. And stay safe and wear your masks. Bye.